Hey, thanks for joining me. A few weeks ago, I did a review on this Licitti AC battery box. And this is basically a simple way to DIY a power station if you haven't seen that video. And I will put a little card up there if you want to go check it out. But basically, it's a 1,000 watt AC inverter with a solar charge controller. And all you have to do is connect a battery and you're off to the races with a 1,000 watt power station with an easy to change out battery if you ever need to. Well, they also have a 2,000 watt version. And that's this guy right here. Now they just sent this to me, it just showed up. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but we're gonna figure this out as we go. But this has a 2,000 watt inverter and it will take up to, I think, 55 volts at up to 20 amps of solar power. And like the 1,000 watt version, you really just have to bring your own battery. This one has an LCD screen, which is something that the 1,000 watt did not. So it has a battery monitor that's going to show you things like state of charge and hopefully what kind of solar input you're getting, or what kind of power input, whether it's solar or AC, whatever, depending on how you're charging. So power in, power out, hopefully we'll have that kind of an indicator from this. We'll find out. It's got your standard 12 volt, 10 amp car socket. It's got a type A USB. It's got a type C power delivery port in there as well. And then well, down here is your one AC outlet. And as I mentioned, this is a 2,000 watt inverter. We'll find out if that is 120 volts or 110 volts. That's always important to know. It's got a disconnect switch. It's got a mechanical AC inverter switch, which I like because that means it can automatically turn on the AC inverter once there's sufficient power because it's a mechanical switch if you're charging in the morning, say via solar. And then you've got down here a couple of input and outputs. These are 50 amp ports. I believe the yellow one is the one for solar, and the top one is a 50 amp in or out. And it does come with a number of cables. So let's take a look and see what we get in the cable bag. All right, so we've got a couple of protective plastic or rubber boots here for the battery terminals. You've got a little pair of, these aren't really jumper cables. These are really more for kind of charging a car battery or charging another battery if you wanted to from this system. And let's see what else we got in here. We've got, looks like an Allen wrench, probably to take the back cover off. And we have got the MC4 cable. So a couple of MC4 connectors right there. And then that yellow Anderson connector, very large Anderson connector that you would plug into right there in the front. Now this is a 12 volt system. This is not a 24 volt system. So we are limited in that regard to making sure it's a 12 volt battery source or a 12 volt battery array if you want to build a little battery bank. And I think actually Licitti does offer a little, I believe it's either a 240 or 280 amp hour battery kit that will fit in this. And I'm expecting that to show up any day now. And so we're going to do another video that allows you to kind of DIY your own battery kit, which is kind of a cool way to do it. You can learn some things in the process and save a little money. And that's always nice to be able to save a little money while you're learning some things. So pretty cool. I really like these kits that are coming from Licitti. Let's dive into this one and figure out what we can do with it. All right, unlike its smaller brother, this has a black anodized aluminum housing. The 1,000 watt AC battery box has plastic housing. So this is a little more rugged in that sense. Oh, by the way, it does have the specifications here listed on the top. I'll put that up on screen there. It'll make it a little bit easier for you to see. But you can see it does accept a variety of battery types. So you can use lithium iron phosphate, you can use AGM, sealed lead acid or gel type batteries, but it is a 12 volt battery system is what's required. And if you are using lithium iron phosphate, you could, according to this, get up to a 300 amp hour configuration in there. I presume that would be if you were to build a battery system up to 300 amp hours, you could still fit that in there. You're not going to be able to take a 300 amp hour off the shelf drop-in replacement style battery that's already in a case and fit that in there. It won't be enough room, I have no doubt. But then you could use anywhere from a 70 amp hour to 120 amp hour lead acid, like a sealed lead acid type battery if you already have one or you want to save a little money and get something less expensive than lithium iron phosphate. In terms of the dimensions, those are all here. It's about 22¼ inches long in that side. It's about just under 11 inches wide in this direction here. And it is just about 9½ inches tall. And you can put a maximum of 77 pounds inside this thing, which would probably be about what that 300 amp hour lithium iron phosphate would require. So you can charge it via solar or AC, and if you get a cable that has one of those big Anderson connectors on it, or make one, you can charge it from your 12-volt socket in your car if you wanted to. As I mentioned, it does output a max of 2,000 watts. It does say 110 volts, so I'm guessing we're going to confirm that, but I'm guessing it's not 120 since it says right there that it is 110. So 20 amps of solar at a maximum voltage of 55 volts. So we'll test that and find out what kind of solar input we can actually get into, but it will be capped at 20 amps. So we just got to be aware of that. So we'll find out what the actual solar input is on this as we go. And then, as I mentioned, it's got that 50 amp input and output connector and the other ports that I mentioned. All right, and it does have that smart battery monitor. That's that LCD display. That's something that they sell separately that you can add to the AC box externally, but this particular one is built in. So it's kind of nice that you don't have to worry about it. It already comes with the kit. All right, let's get this, this back part off and see what we got to work with. All right, so you got this little back frame here. This is ABS plastic, nice heavy duty ABS plastic, and then an aluminum panel here. All right, and we got some air vents on the top. Okay, so inside we've got a plate that comes all the way out. You see the little crisscross pattern Velcro straps to hold the battery in place. Yeah, so you got some really nice 2-gauge battery cable here, and these are nicely crimped. It's kind of epoxied on the end, it looks like, perhaps. And then there's some insulating material to keep abrasions from happening as you're moving around this metal plate, I'm sure. That's the shunt that allows you to use the battery monitor to get accurate readings for state of charge. So the solar charge controller says that it does output to 20 amps, and it can handle 12 or 24 volt battery systems, but since this unit has only a 12 volt inverter, you're pretty much relegated to using 12 volt. All right, so let me find a suitable battery that we could fit in this thing. And like I said, you're gonna have some constraints on the inside of this case because of the charge controller for the solar is over here on the left, mounted to the side. So you have some constraints in width and some constraints in depth, and then obviously on height. So because this little battery mounting plate here is going to sit on top of this and leave a little room on the bottom for ventilation. So, all right, let me see if I can find a battery to put in this thing, and we'll get this thing working. All right, so I've got a standard 12 volt 100 amp hour battery on this little mounting plate, and that looks like about the size that it's designed to accommodate. So unless you can find one in this normal sort of standard form factor that is a larger capacity, and you still want to use this mounting plate to secure it, like say you're in an RV situation, you don't want this thing to bounce around, this might be the easiest way to stick with 100 amp hour. But yeah, so let me go ahead and cinch this down. All right, I feel like that does a pretty good job. All right, now I'm going to put the negative terminal here in the back, facing the back, and the positive in the front. And the reason for that is because in the battery box, it does seem like the negative cable is just a little bit longer than the positive cable. That may not actually be the case, but that's the way it looks. Now, I did already go ahead and put those little protective boots on the terminals here so they don't contact the case or anything. So I just kind of pushed those down onto the cables, and then I will bolt on these connectors, put the boots in place, and we should be pretty safe in terms of keeping anything from short circuiting. So let me go ahead and do the negative first. Cool, that boot actually does a real nice job of covering that terminal. All right, now let me make sure that I have got the battery disconnect in the off position, and it wasn't. It was in the on position. So yeah, I don't want to get a nasty spark here. So I turned it off, and the AC inverter would have been off anyway, so I don't imagine I would have gotten a spark, but just in case. Now this, I'm probably going to flip around the other way so that I can feed it in there cleanly. Yeah, look at it, it's a nice good seal. It's a perfectly sized rubber boot for this. All right, now let's see if I've painted myself into a corner or not in terms of being able to slide this in there. Nope, oh, okay, there's plenty of slack. And let's see, yeah, the boots are important because you come right up to the top there. feel like these can maybe come down the side like that, since there's enough open space. Yeah, so the cables tuck in nicely on this this back side here. All right, before I put anything back together, let's just turn this around. All right, let's turn the disconnect back to the on position. And the LCD display did come up right away. I think this battery is fairly well charged. We are reading 13.3 volts right now. And let's turn on the AC inverter. Got a beep there. So I'm reading 120 volts. So that's interesting. The thing on the top, the label on the top says 110 volts at 2000 watts, but I'm definitely reading 120 volts, as you can see right there. So that's actually good. I wasn't expecting that. It looks like Bluetooth, so I maybe have some app connection here. So I'm gonna have to download the app. It does come with a manual, by the way, and I haven't looked at the manual yet. You know, maybe I should look at the manual. But it is so simple just to get up and running. I'm gonna go ahead and put the back cover back on. Go ahead and shut this down while I'm doing that. And yeah, and then I'm going to read the manual, and then we're going to test the AC inverter and test the solar and try to get a good idea of how this thing performs. All right, I've got an oil heater plugged in right now, and I am pulling 1354 watts. You can hear the fans on the AC inverter. Let's see how loud those are. I'm kind of surprised that it's registering 65 decibels, because it really seems pretty quiet. I don't quite understand why it's showing that high. I'm getting wind in there somehow. Yeah, I mean, it's registering 57 decibels when I'm not getting down here where the air vents are blowing air out. But honestly, it doesn't even seem that loud. It seems like it's more in the 40s to me. It's a fairly low volume white noise. All right, what we're going to do is I'm going to run this all the way down using this oil heater, and until the BMS on the internal BMS on the battery itself actually shuts us down. And I've got my 400 watt BougeRV solar panel connected here. Now it's dark outside, so we're not getting any solar input at all. But what I want to do is I'm going to plug in a DC fridge with the AC adapter. And normally you wouldn't do that with an AC fridge or a DC fridge. But I'm going to use the AC adapter so I can plug it into the AC output here with the AC inverter left on, even though the battery is dead. And what I want to see what happens is if this thing begins charging the battery on solar in the morning when the sun comes up. Since this is a mechanical AC inverter switch, does the AC inverter re-engage and start powering the fridge automatically in the morning? I think that would be a very cool experiment to run. All right, as you can see, we have run this all the way down. We're currently at 11.5 volts. All I have plugged in right now is the DC fridge via the AC adapter that it comes with. So I'm running the DC fridge off of AC, and I have the AC inverter still in the on position. And we are just going to let it stay in this state. If for some reason the BMS recovers, that DC fridge should run this down adequately to basically zero overnight, because it is just about 10 o'clock at night, not getting any solar input, but I do have that 400 watt BougeRV solar panel connected right here through this Anderson connector. So we'll check back sometime mid to late morning, maybe around noon tomorrow, and find out if this thing has recovered and has the AC inverter started powering the fridge again while we're getting solar input to the solar connector here. So let's check back tomorrow and see how we're doing. All right, it is about 11 a.m. the next day. I do see that the DC fridge appears to be powered up. See, our AC inverter is on. Let's just kind of see what we're getting here. We're back up to 30% state of charge. And let's see, we are currently inputting about 257 watts. All right, so we know we can at least get 257 watts. All right, now the charge controller can take up to 55 volts. So I took my 800 watt solar array and I divided it into two 400 watt series strings and then strung those in parallel so that the voltage coming out of my leads here does not exceed just about 40 to 42 volts max. So that's under the 55 volt max. So it's perfectly fine to do this. And we're going to find out how much power we can actually get in to this unit using that 800 watt array, because I don't think it'll take the full 800. Of course, I rarely get the full 800, but on a day like today, I might get 600 out of that. And let's just see what we actually get. And I am still kind of capping out just around that 265 to 270 watt mark, even with a 400 watt array. So I do think that you should probably assume that you're not going to be able to get more than about 270 watts in consistently on this. So maybe a 300 watt panel would be appropriate, and or maybe even a 400 watt panel if you want to over panel, and then you would only get typically about 267, 270, well there's 274.
Yeah, 220, 221, whatever it takes.
Say 275 watts would be about the maximum I think you're going to get into this particular product. All right, let's do a load test on this Licitti 2000 watt inverter. I do have a couple things plugged into it right now. I don't have it turned on yet. And since I don't have a battery with something bigger than a 100 amp BMS, I've got a couple of batteries strung together in parallel, hanging outside here, connected to the AC inverter in here. We're going to use the mobile app that you can see. I'll put that up on screen right now. And you can see there's a mobile app in here. It shows me the current voltage, amps, power, basically the same information that you get on the battery monitor LCD. Then you can actually go into the settings here, and it's a lot easier to go in here and turn on the capacity alarm or set the capacity alarm, your min and max voltages, your battery capacity, all that sort of stuff. I'm not really worried about that stuff right now because I just want to run a load test. So let's go ahead and start adding some load, and let's see if we can get this thing very close to 2000 watts. And if we can, then we'll try to run it for 10 minutes and see if it can sustain maximum load for 10 minutes. All right, let's start adding some load and see where we get. All right, I'm trying a different combination of stuff here to try to get this close to 2000 watts. I don't have all of my normal heaters out here because it's cold and some of them are in the house. So I'm going to use a heat gun, which is a little annoying because it's noisy, but I think I can get us pretty close. All right, that's going to get us a little over 1900 watts. Let me go ahead and start the timer. See if that'll last for 10 minutes. All right, go ahead and shut it down. We didn't get quite to 1900 watts. That's my fault because I didn't have enough load to throw at it. So this 2000 watt inverter definitely can do in the mid 1800s, no problem. And yeah, and it's sustaining that for 10 minutes. But I would say that the load test passes on this Licitti 2000 watt inverter. Okay, so I think this product is in an interesting position, kind of given its size and performance characteristics, but a little more on that in just a minute. Now, I do like the fact that it's a super quick and easy DIY power station with a very solid functionality that kind of covers all the basics. Plus, it's got mobile app monitoring kind of as a bonus. But there are a couple things that I think could be improved. So first, the solar charging with the internal charge controller does appear to max out at about 270 watts. Now, that's enough to get you a full charge on a 100 amp hour 12 volt battery in a single day. But if you were to put a higher capacity battery in this, say 200 amp hours or more, that 270 watt solar charging max is not going to be enough to fully recharge that kind of capacity in just a single day of full sun. Now you could of course connect an external charge controller to that 50 amp input-output connector here on the front and get significantly more solar charging input if you absolutely needed to, but it would be nice if the internal charge controller already had that capacity for a single day recharge on higher capacity batteries, that it's designed to be able to accommodate. And it'd be more convenient if it had more than just a single AC outlet on the front, but at least it is a 20 amp rated outlet, so you could just easily connect a power strip to it for more outlets if you needed them, just kind of like what I did in the video. Now, finally, the size of the battery is pretty large, especially in the length dimension at just over 20, I think it's about 22 1/4 inches. Now, if you're planning to max out the capacity with the DIY battery assembly, then the size is actually pretty reasonable, since you could be getting something upwards of 3,500 watt hours, which is a ton of capacity for a portable power station. But if you're planning to just add an off-the-shelf standard 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery, well, that's kind of a large footprint to end up with only 1,280 watt hours of capacity. And going that route would also limit you to about 1,280 watts continuous output based on the standard 100 amp BMS that those batteries typically have. But if that's really all you need for now, then I suppose it's still a reasonable option, since it does give you the flexibility to easily put in a higher capacity battery at a later date if you wanted to. On the other hand, if you don't think you'd ever need more than about 1,280 watt hours of capacity, then I think you're probably better off going with like the 1,000 watt AC battery box than this 2,000 watt version. Now, that said, where this 2,000 watt battery box really becomes a compelling option is if you bundle it with Licitti's 280 amp hour DIY battery kit, which I think is what this battery box is actually designed around. With that kind of combo, you're actually going to get a 2,000 watt, 3,500 watt hour capacity power station for just under $1,000, which works out to just under 28 cents a watt hour, which is basically in the same range of what you'd pay for an off-the-shelf lithium iron phosphate battery that does not have a charge controller or an AC inverter or DC output ports. You get the idea. And we're going to be checking out that 280 amp hour DIY battery kit in an upcoming video sometime in the next few weeks. So that should be a fun little project, and maybe we can also learn a few things along the way, which is always a bonus. Okay, I think that's a wrap. I do hope you found at least something helpful in the video. If you did, please consider clicking on that like button for me. I'd really very much appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, maybe consider subscribing as well. I offer my sincere thanks for stopping by and watching this particular video, and I do hope you'll consider joining me for the next one. Until then, have fun out there.